Hi students, welcome to session 4. Today we're going to look at exercise and exercise adherence and also some strategies to help individuals commit to programs. So let me share my screen with you. As soon as I get my PowerPoint up. Okay, so let's begin this lecture. So first and foremost, let's have a look at the exercise and the psychological benefits of being involved in exercise and what it can do for your well-being. Mental health in Australia. The National Survey of Mental Health and Wellbeing conducted in 2007 revealed that 45% of Australians, estimated 7.3 million, aged 16 to 85, will experience a common mental health related condition such as depression, anxiety, or substance use disorder in their lifetime. Now, this is quite an alarming number. 45% of us will experience it. So we're looking at 7.3 million. At some stage in your life, I'm sure that you've experienced an episode of anxiety or depression or substance abuse. So this is quite an alarming statistic that obviously we need to pay attention to and do something about. So why exercise? The World Health Organization has predicted that depression will be the world's second leading cause of death and disability by 2020. Therefore, again, an alarming stat that we need to definitely implement some strategies so that we stop causes of death led by conditions that affect your psychological well-being. Typical treatments in the past for this is psychological counselling. So a lot of my athletes or people that I've worked with have experienced some type of depression or anxiety in their life or even related to their sport performance. So we work through strategies on identifying what triggers it, why, what's the meaning of the symptoms, why are they experiencing some type of stress related from that, and then we have a look at some strategies to put in place to help alleviate the symptoms. Drug therapy is another one, so obviously going to your GP or being referred to a psychiatrist to get some drugs for it, or both. But what's been really interesting recently is that they found that exercise is really good at promoting psychological well-being. So we're looking at more treatment forms that are related to exercise rather than drugs or just counselling alone. Okay, so let's have a look at the benefits. Although there's no cause and effect relationship that has been established between regular exercise, regular exercise is associated with reductions in anxiety and depression. So if you are physically active and you do this on a regular occasion, you're most likely not going to experience anxiety and depression to the extent that somebody who does not regularly exercise. Research also suggests that regular exercise leads to improved psychological effect. So a reduction in negative effects, so again, a reduction in anxiety and depression, but also an increase in positive effect, so self-efficacy and well-being. And I always think about my own personal experience when I walk into the gym and I don't really want to do my program or whatever it is that I'm doing, but the feeling that you get when you exit the gym, that increased positive effect, you feel good, you feel energized, you do get benefits out of it. And I think when you work with individuals who are experiencing negative effects such as anxiety and depression, allowing them to experience that and then tap into the positive benefits of exercising, like how good did you feel after your session, will help promote positive change and hopefully in the future regular exercise. So here's the benefits. So we have increases in self-esteem, feeling of enjoyment, self-confidence and mood states. Again, it goes back to what I was saying before, the positive benefits that you get from being physically active, exiting the gym after a really good session. You do get an increase in mood state. You feel good about yourself, and you're enjoying that feeling. Decreases in psychological and physical stress. I know one of my go-tos is, as soon as I start feeling stressed, go for a walk, go for a run, do something physically active so I can alleviate the stress that's associated with problems that are occurring or any stresses in my way. And then also the anxiety and depression decreases that you can experience if you're physically active. Problems related to exercise adherence. I guess the big challenge is getting people started, but the even bigger challenge is to get somebody to continue the program once they have started. My brothers always, that I hear, particularly my younger brother, who talks about, oh yeah, I'm going to start my program on Monday, and by Wednesday it's gone. So then later on in the week I hear, yeah, no, I'll start again on Monday. So it's about, whilst they've done one session, it's about getting them to continue that regular pattern of positive behaviour. It's easier to start a program and adhere to a program, and it's known that at least 50% of participants will drop out of exercise programs within the first 6 months. I think it's really important that we know that, so that when you are working with people in your field, that you normalise this. So, you're not, and the last thing we want them to do is feel as though they're quitters, because they're probably going to want to start again. So just the awareness of that and the empathy surrounding that the fact that they're probably going to experience difficulties trying to get to that regular pattern, but it's okay if they drop out, because, we know that. So it's about, how do we prevent them from dropping out in the future? So what problems did they face, and what strategies can we put in place so that they don't experience, or they don't want to drop out of a program? You can get some really valuable information from tapping into reasons why people dropped out, and then organising strategies around those problems. Okay, so the theories that we're going to have a look at related to exercise behaviour, we'll look at 5 of them. So the health belief model, the theory of planned behaviour, social cognitive theory, the self-determination theory, and the trans-theoretical model of the stages of change. We're going to explore each one of them, and I'm going to explain the research behind if applying these models helps us understand exercise to begin a program, but also to adhere to a program. The health belief model focuses on preventative, or has been associated with preventative behaviour. So stopping people doing, I think one of the, I don't know if you remember, but way back when, they had the HIV, the Grim Reaper ads about the bowling alley, which I really thought was disturbing, but that was an approach to educate people not to engage in this behaviour. So it goes back to preventative health. And it says that the likelihood of the individual to engage in preventative health behaviours depends on the person's perception of the severity of the potential illness, as well as his or her appraisal of the cost and benefits of taking action. So, if you think that the potential illness is serious and that you're at risk and that your pros outweigh the cons, you're likely to adopt the target behaviour. So it's again that awareness of the potential risks, and that if the pros outweigh the cons, you're likely to say, right, I'm not going to engage in that behaviour because these are the benefits I get from not engaging, and I'm going to adopt the healthy behaviour behind it. But this model was originally developed to focus on disease, not exercise, and it has been shown to be inconsistent. But we often associate this health belief model with the scare tactics, like look at cigarette packets with the gruesome pictures on it. Again, it's trying to encourage people not to take up this behaviour. The theory of planned behaviour. This is an extension to the theory of reason action. It's all about intention, and I talk about, actually I was speaking to somebody on the weekend about intention. I was talking about somebody changing behaviour. So this individual was doing really, getting into drugs, and these guys are married, and she said, I really want him to change. And I said, well, if they don't have the intention to change, they're not going to change. This is a fundamental element. So regardless of whether you want your partner or somebody in your life to take on positive behaviour, if they actually don't have that intention, they're likely going to drop out of that behaviour. So your intention is determined by 3 factors: your individual attitudes towards behaviour, the subjective norms, as well as your belief that you can control, you have control. So if we have a look at this model, it basically asserts that an individual will maintain or initiate an exercise program if one's intention is firm and they feel in control. One's intention is a function of one's attitude towards exercise and social perceived norms. So it's about what values you place on that particular behaviour, but also what are the people around you, and what's acceptable behaviour. So, for example, if you come from a family who are really sedentary and couch potatoes, and they don't place value on exercise, then those social perceived norms might really influence your intention to change. There is general support for this theory, and it looks like this. So we've got one's attitude and one's social norms, along with their belief that they have control in the situation. These 3 things will influence your intention, and this will influence whether you exercise or not. And again, the factor that you believe you have control in that environment, and you can exercise, and you are capable to do that. So again, the theory has general support, and it can help explain exercise adherence and the ability to start a program. The social cognitive theory, this looks or asserts that one's perception that they can successfully perform a behaviour increases the likelihood that they will engage in it. Self-efficacy is a powerful predictor of exercise behaviours. So self-efficacy is a belief that you can do the task. Individuals who believe in themselves and believe that they can maintain an exercise program are generally more successful. So it goes back to the belief that you can do the task. This is important, the belief, the self-efficacy, but usually we use this theory, we incorporate it into other theories. So we know the variable of belief in the power that you can change, and self-efficacy is important, but it fits really well in other theories as one of the variables that contribute to why people start or adhere to an exercise program. The next theory is the self-determination theory. This examines the type of motivation we have towards a behaviour. So there are a number of different types of motivation that exist on a continuum. So let's have a look at the continuum. We have A motivation, which is the absence of motivation. This is associated with lower likelihood of participation in behaviour. So if you don't have any motivation to take on change and to adapt to a particular behaviour, then lower likelihood of participation in that behaviour. Extrinsic motivation. This looks at participation in activity to satisfy external demands. So money, anything, external trophies. When the award is removed, though, the motivation is lost. And you do find that particularly with children, not necessarily related to exercise, but if you want to encourage a positive behaviour, often when you remove the reward, that motivation to do the behaviour is lost because there's no longer that reward. However, what we really want to encourage is intrinsic motivation. This is doing something for its own sake in the absence of external rewards. So you're doing it because for the love of it and the belief in it and the fact that you have the want to do it. Having an intrinsic motivation towards a behaviour has the most positive outcomes. It does increase persistence long term because you feel the value that you're doing it for the love or for its own sake rather than, oh, if I do this behaviour, I'll get McDonald's afterwards. So there's nothing externally attached to it. The strengths about this theory, research supports the proposal that intrinsic motivation results in positive outcomes and more controlled forms result in lower effect. So if you are trying to encourage someone to do a positive behaviour by rewarding, so a controlled form, as soon as you remove it, it's going to have a lower effect. However, the limitations of the self-determination theory, some controlled forms can actually encourage behaviour. Motivation is viewed as a trait concept only. You're not considering the environment around you. So these limitations can affect, I guess, the overall, if we're looking at individuals starting a program or adhering to a program, there are some problems with that. Now, the trans-theoretical model, stages of change model, I have found really, really valuable to understand why people start and stick to a program. But what it really does is it separates it into different stages and it allows you to understand the mindset of the individual within that stage. So the stage of change model is designed to explain the processes that people went through to stop smoking. So we're looking at stopping a behaviour once you've started it rather than beginning a behaviour and adhering to it. It suggests that individuals pass through 5 dynamic stages in adopting healthy long-term exercise behaviour. It is dynamic because individuals may move in and out of stages or they might jump stages. So it's not a progressional that you move from stage 1 or stage 2. It's actually quite dynamic. You can move up or down or you can jump stages. Other factors that interact with stages of change to bring about change in behaviour. And again, this goes back to the point that about self-efficacy fits really well into this model. This is one variable that can influence whether you change behaviour or not. Decisional balance sheet. What's really important is for the individual to have a look at the pros and cons of the gains and losses. Once the gains outweigh the losses or the pros outweigh the cons, then an individual is more likely to take on a positive change because they can see the value in it. Temptation, so the urge to relapse to old habits, can influence whether somebody takes on and adheres to a behaviour change. And then the processes of change. So I'm going to have a look at them now with you. So this is what the model looks like. We have the pre-contemplation stage. In this stage, individual has low self-efficacy and the pros outweigh the cons. So let's have a look at this. So the pre-contemplation stage, the individual in this stage has no real intentions of beginning any regular exercise program. They have low self-efficacy, the belief that they can do it, and their cons outweigh the pros quite drastically. So when they do that list, it's much easier to sit on the couch and eat potato chips. The pros aren't. The education behind why they need to exercise hasn't actually influenced the values that the person holds. So the process of change that could help to encourage the individual to move to the next stage is consciousness raising. So being aware of the cost of maintaining the behaviour that they're doing, dramatic relief and environmental reevaluation will help the individual move to the next stage. Really identifying triggers, like if you don't change, you're not going to see your grandkids grow up. And then having a look at the environment and really allowing them to investigate what is good about their environment and tapping into those kind of thought processes. The next stage is contemplation stage. In this stage, individuals acknowledge the need to exercise and intend to do so within approximately the next 6 months. In this stage, the person still has low belief that they can get it done, and the cons still outweigh the pros. But what's important in terms of trying to get them to change is self-re-evaluation. They need to look at themselves and look at all their strengths and reevaluate the way they see themselves and the fact that they can and they are capable of doing something and a positive change rather than maintain a behaviour. The next stage is the preparation stage. In this stage, individuals begin to make the necessary changes towards beginning regular exercises, but only minimal action is taken. Here, the individual has slightly higher self-efficacy and similar pros and cons. So now your pros and cons are kind of even. They do believe they can do it. They probably showed aspects, throughout the week where they've done part of that behaviour change, but it's just not consistent enough. So that could actually affect their belief that they can do it, particularly if you're not acknowledging or rewarding that. So self-liberation and social liberation is important. Really encouraging the person to keep going and that, they're almost there. Action stage, motivation and investment in behaviour change are sufficient and perceived benefits are greater than the perceived costs. So we have moved them on and they value exercise and they know it's important, but at this stage there is still that highly likelihood of somebody relapsing. So as a trainer in this field, you've got to be aware of this, and it's not abnormal. It's the normal process, and we need to make sure we've got strategies in place to stop relapse. So they have high self-efficacy in this stage, and the pros outweigh the cons. So education isn't really something that needs to be done now. They see the benefits and they understand why it's important to do it. Some processes of change that could come into play here is contingency management, rewarding, encouraging, goal setting, that kind of stuff. Helping relationships, having support networks, people to help them through this process. Counter conditioning and stimulus control. I mean, sometimes doing practical things like if they have to get up early in the morning to do the exercise, a lot of people would rather sleep in. Doing something like having your phone away from your bed, so you have to actually get out of your bed to go and turn the alarm off, is a good control mechanism to make sure you're up now, so you get it done. Having your clothes ready beside your bed, simple things like that can help somebody get this behaviour into the maintenance stage. So now we look at the maintenance stage. Behaviour has changed and been evident for at least 6 months. The risk of relapse is low in this stage. The person has high self-efficacy, and the pros greatly outweigh the cons. So the only problem in this stage would be boredom, or they might eventually get lack motivation, or not interested in enjoying it. So enjoyment and keeping them engaged is important. So variation would be helpful. The last stage is the determination stage, and basically you exit the stages of change, and now it's a permanent part of your life. So you're no longer in the stages of change. This is ended at 5 years. So behaviour change has been evident for 5 years, and relapse simply doesn't occur. So some of us are in that stage where we exercise and it's just part of who we are and what we do, and it's important. So it is important to know, and this is what I was saying about this model, why I find it really valuable. It's important to know what stage of change an individual is in. The interventions that you implement need to be suited to that stage, or you're going to lose them. If you get a mismatch between the stage of change and the intervention strategy, this has been associated to dropout. And I think it's really important that personal trainers and restricted conditioning coaches are really familiar with this, so that you then have the right strategy for the right person in the right stage, so that they can move through those stages into termination. So for example, I'll give you an example of somebody applying the wrong strategy. If an individual is in the contemplation stage, so this is where they're kind of thinking about it, but you know, they're going to do it in the next 6 months. An intervention that focuses on maintenance strategies, like motivational, you can do it kind of thing, dropout will increase. Okay, so you've got to match it. So for example, I'm not going to do education with somebody in the maintenance stage because they've already been educated about that. For them, they need enjoyment, variation, programs that are suited to what they're interested in. So that's what I find, that's what I found really helpful working in the field. The strengths about the stages of change model, it has been applied across a range of health behaviours and useful across different populations. It does acknowledge individual differences, and it is useful for targeting interventions at participants at appropriate times. And that's what I found the most helpful thing about this explanation of exercise behaviour and adherence. The model, though, is based on stopping undesired behaviours rather than taking up healthy behaviours. So more research is needed to see if this stands for the taking on exercise rather than stopping smoking. The research had only been cross-sectional research rather than longitudinal. So they just went, right, people in the contemplation stage, we're doing an investigation on them rather than watching one person moving through all the stages. And then components were looked at in isolation rather than the entire model. And again, that goes to doing the one-off experiment rather than let's observe somebody over a period of time. Okay, back on this, so part of one of your exercises is to see to the state of change of the individual. So we'll have a look at that in our online tube. So just maybe brainstorm some ideas that you can think of and jot them down, and we'll have a discussion. Let's move on to the determinants of exercise adherence. This provides another way to study adherence to exercise, and it looks at personal and environmental factors. I'll look at personal factors. One of the first things we think about is demographic variables. It's known that people with high incomes are more educated, have higher occupational status, and are more likely to be physically active. Okay, so we really need to be mindful of this, particularly working with the low income families about how to get them engaged. Cognitive and personality variables. Self-efficacy, so the belief that you can do it, and self-motivation are the most important consistent predictors of physical activity. So you probably need to tap into identifying, do they believe that they can do it? And are they motivated? Do they have the intention to do it? Behaviours, positive relationship between early participation in physical activity, parental support, and adult physical activity patterns. So children are more likely to, and adolescents are more likely to adopt this behaviour if their parents are showing support for it and they are physically active themselves. Environmental factors, so the social environment, what your friends and or your spouse, whether they feel that it's a valuable to take on this exercise. I have known of people who are working with, say, for example, a mother whose spouse is really annoyed about the fact that they were well enough or whatever. So that negative attitude towards the behaviour sometimes leads to people dropping out of programs because it's inconvenient. The physical environment, whether it's convenient and proximity, somebody to travel a long distance to get to the gym or to the exercise session. So we want to make sure it's convenient and close. Activity characteristics, the intensity. It's known that moderate intensity exercises are more beneficial. Levels of discomfort also come into play. So if you get to do a thing and you're throwing up, obviously that level of discomfort won't encourage you to come back. Group versus individual programs. They do find that group programs are more effective than individual programs in that people then feel obligated to go to the group programs because obviously they form social bonds, and it's also enjoyable versus individual programs. But I think it also depends on the personality of the individual. To be honest, I like going to the gym by myself and I don't like to talk to people when I'm at the gym. That session's for me and I just want to nut it out. But then I do have friends who need somebody to go to the gym with. So match it to suit the individual that you're working with. Leadership qualities. What we do as leaders will affect whether they will stick to a program and adhere to it or start a program. Obviously, you're not going to be able to tap into everybody. I think it's okay that you can't work with some people. I mean, I've had that as a sports psychologist, not being able to work with certain people because our personalities clash. But your qualities, know what they want. I find it really overwhelming when I go into a class and the person's screaming at you and yelling at you. I spent 26 years playing basketball. The last thing I want is that intensity when I'm not elite anymore. So, or to some level elite. So for me, it should be enjoyable and I don't need somebody to push myself. But then I have other people who enjoy that. And actually I was getting a remedial massage one day and I was talking to the therapist and she said to me, "Oh, Karen, I'm going to give you this card. It's of a awesome personal trainer. He gets up you and he yells at you." And I was just looking at her going, I actually would hate that. I would absolutely hate that. So it was interesting, and I didn't say much. I just kind of took the card and went, yeah, and put it in my pocket and then in the bin because no, that person won't work for me. So it's important that you understand the person that you're working with and what they need from you. All right, the last section, we're going to look at some guidelines for improving exercise adherence. Most importantly, back to that point about the stages of change, match the intervention to suit the stage of change. Provide cues, reminders of, alarms, posters, anything to encourage that behaviour and help them get there. Make it enjoyable and provide variation in physical activity. I think ask them what they want and then devise a program around what they want rather than a generic program that you're just rolling out because it's easy. Tap into what they're interested in. Obviously the FIT principles, frequency, intensity, time and type. Promote group exercise. Like I said, research says that it's more effective, but again, tap into your individual and see what they prefer. Contract agreements are good because I actually find what's more powerful is if they write the contract themselves, they sign it, and now they and obviously with your guidance, they sign it and then they're stuck to a contract because I guess people get disappointed when they don't follow through with the contract, so that can come in handy. Provide awards for attendance and participation. I know many gyms will chart attendance and participation and they have rewards like And the rewards are positive, encourage the behaviour more, like exercise equipment, towels, drink bottles, that kind of stuff. Individualise your feedback, make sure you're working with that individual and you're encouraging their behaviour and you're being personable, and you're working with that individual and you're there for that individual. That's really important. And find a convenient place to exercise. Look at the individual, see what their barriers are and make sure that you pick a place where it's easy for them to get to, and if they've got children, what can they do with their children, that kind of stuff. Reward for achievements, whether it's a physical reward or verbal, really important. You want to make sure they stay motivated and they believe in themselves. Goals should be set by the exerciser. They need to be flexible and time-based. Excuse me. Goals should be set by the exerciser. That's the most important thing. And so when you're writing the contract, get them to write their goals, and so they own them and they're responsible for them. If you give them the goal, they'll just look at you and go, well, that's your goals. It not necessarily means what I want to achieve. Encourage disassociation. So this is a concept, rather than tuning into how tired you're feeling and how fatigued you're feeling, dissociation makes them distract themselves from that. So music's a great thing. Talking to them while they're exercising, get them to disassociate from the discomfort of exercise. Decisional balance sheets are so important. Get them to do pros and cons, and you keep working on that pros and cons list, and you educate them until the pros outweigh the cons. Make sure you've got social support. Check in with their beliefs and values of their spouse and how it affects them, so that you know what you're up against. Suggest keeping a daily exercise log, so they just write down. Make sure it's easy too. You don't want something that's lengthy, so they can just jot down what they've been doing. It's very hard to get them to reflect a week later of what they've done. So maybe a simple program. There's so many apps now that are great, don't require much energy and effort. Practice time management skills. Like I said in week 2, I mean, one of the biggest factors why people don't exercise is because they don't feel they have time. So making sure you're investigating what their time management skills are like, and help participants choose a purposeful physical activity. Make sure that they're doing something they want to do and it has a meaning to them, rather than just a generic program. Relapse will happen, and it's normal, and I don't think we need to make somebody feel bad about relapsing. But what you want to do is the next cycle that they start, you want to prevent it. So expect and plan for them. Here's some strategies to do that. Develop coping strategies for high-risk situations. Find out what the high-risk situations are and have strategies in place. Replace shoulds with wants to provide more balance in your life. We don't want them to feel pressure. When you say shoulds, you put pressure on them. We want them to do this rather than they must do it. Use positive self-talk and imagery to avoid self-dialogues focusing on relapse. So it's, again, you're going to have to tap into their thoughts about what they're saying to themselves, and you might need to do some cognitive strategies to change their outlook into a more positive one. So, for example, I'm too tired to go to the gym. Changing those thought patterns to, I know I'm going to feel great after I get this session done. I'm going to feel really good. So having a look at stuff like that. Identify risk situations and avoid or plan for them. It's quite, again, it goes back to that thing. Just be ready for it. Get them to jot it down. What were their thoughts? What caused them to not go to that session? So you're ready for them when they come. And most important, don't view it as a catastrophe. You're going to undermine their confidence. It's normal. For you, it's like, okay, well, it happened. Let's work on it again and just keep working on it until it becomes a permanent change in their behaviour. Okay, so that filled us in. I'm going to turn the PowerPoint off. And I'll go back to you guys. Oh, hopefully. How do I do that? Hang on one sec. I've hidden it, so I'm just going to get myself back on. I'm not sure if I'm still sharing my screen or not. It looks like I am. So Google Hangout. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the lecture. Make sure you take some stuff on board. Have a look at your exercises and your tutorial content for the week. Try and fill it in, and I'll meet you in the online tutorial on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Speak to you then. Bye.